In this video, we'll focus on mapping. Mapping can be defined as an act of matching the fields of our source integration, in this case intercom, to the fields of our target integration or destination, which is in this case Google Sheets. So mapping is as simple as dragging, taking one field that we want to connect to the other, and dragging it to the correct one on the right hand side. So you will notice that every time that we try to connect two fields, we will be asked for our fallback value. Fallback value serves as a replacement when not all source entities contain that value. So that basically means that if the cell is not populated in the source integration, we will always put something in the target integration. So for example, in this case, we can put no name. That means that each time the name is not present in intercom, it will show as no name in Google Sheets. That's particularly useful for the fields that are required, such as this one, and the fields that have orange circle next to them are the mandatory fields. So API schemas of platforms that we integrate will often require certain fields to be mapped for the task to work. Also, there is a different type of mandatory field that is an empty orange circle, which means that it will always be next to an arrow. So that means that there is a drop-down menu, in which case one or more fields under that drop-down menu will be mandatory, will have full orange circle next to them. Next useful feature that will be present regardless of the source integration in question is constant value. And similar to fallback value, constant value can be mapped with any field of which we want one predefined value across all entries. In this case, we can set a constant value to be, for example, USA, and that means that the location for all of our entries will present as USA in Google Sheets, regardless of the input. We can then map all the other fields accordingly. And when we are done, we can use our preview values to get a glimpse of all of our mapping and if we mapped everything correctly. Okay, so everything is mapped correctly. This means that the owner ID was not present because we did not set a fallback value. It will be blank, and that's perfectly fine because it's not a mandatory field. In this video, we'll focus on the types of fields that we have in mapping. The first two that we already covered in the first video were number and text, and they're simple as they're basically simply being exported from our source integration to our target integration as such. The next one is options field, and that means that we'll have several different options in our target integration depending on the input from our source integration. In this example, we have our location as the options field and we'll map it with our country from our source integration. As we have several different options in the destination attribute, we can map Serbia from the input, for example, as SRB. The next option is Germany. Let's say that it's also abbreviated GER. And the last one is Austria. That is also abbreviated. So if the input in our source integration is SRB, it will be exported as Serbia in our destination. If anything else is put in, it will not be selected, or if we select a fallback value, it can be a default. For example, Serbia will be a default, and we can select if we want to map it automatically or to create it dynamically or use a fallback value if the value is not mapped. The next type is a collection of fields, and it's signified by an arrow next to the name. When you click that arrow, you will get a drop-down menu of all the subfields in that collection. In case that one or more of the fields in that collection is mandatory, there will be an empty orange circle, like we said in the previous video. So constant value can be used on any type of the field. For example, we can start with the number field, and if we set a certain number as a constant value, that means that it will always be exported to our target integration as that number, regardless of the input. It can can also be used for the options field as well. For example, if you only want to export shirts, it can be used with a multiple value as well, if a field can accept multiple values. So for example, if we have many different colors, we can select, for example, a constant value of red and blue as well. So that means that the value will always be red and blue in our target integration. Next, we can also use constant value for the date. If we want to select a certain date, for example, let it be July 11th, 2018. And we can also use constant value for the Boolean option, which means if we want to select true or false, we can use constant value for the hierarchies as well. We can use root, or we can also select its children. In this case, let's select child number 2. And that's it. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.